beautiful people, and welcome back to Beyond the Veil, a podcast on psychic protection, spiritual hygiene, and navigating the ebbs and flows of the healing journey as you learn to master both your sovereign and shadow selves. My name is Lauren on Earth, your host, and welcome back to another episode. I know it's been a minute, took a little break, and we are going to talk about discernment today and the signs to look for when someone on the spiritual and healing path isn't fully grounded in their sense of self, whether it be a false light hijacking or being caught in an underworld web or egregore, or even a form of psychosis, because psychosis is a spectrum. And what I'm going to start explaining on this podcast, as we continue moving through these episodes, is the vastness of the hijacked systems that we're all plugged into, aka the Matrix, and how massive the false light web and agenda really is. So if you can kind of like picture this web or grid system or cube technology with all of these layers, wormholes, realms that exist within it. And I'm going to talk today a little bit about how the false light systems go all the way up through the fifth, sixth, seventh, even eighth dimensions to give you a little bit better of an idea of just how deep it all goes and how many healers and practitioners are not fully aware of this. They have not gotten to that point in their own work where they've pulled themselves out of these higher dimensional distortions and how their energy is still connected to it, being influenced by it, and being siphoned from it, and subtly controlled by it, ultimately perpetuating that cycle with you, the person receiving. So again, whether we're talking about a healer, a spiritual leader, or even a close friend or family member that's on this path, being able to observe and identify these qualities is important. And maybe you saw my reel a couple weeks ago about judgment versus observation. And before we get into the episode, I just want to explain my intention in teaching this because I don't want to be pointing fingers at other people. This isn't about judging them. This is about you and me and all of us reclaiming our own power, our own energy, and having clarity when it comes to engaging with and opening up to other people. People who may not have your best interests at heart, people who may actually be trying to deceive you, or they're not truly who they project themselves to be. Or there are some serious blind spots and they mean well, they just don't realize or see it. And they're perpetuating this cycle of inversion, even though they want to and think that they're doing the right thing. I personally don't feel like these people, especially those that are actively working with the dark forces, deserve my protection. I'm not here to protect them. And I feel like so many people, and maybe this is just programming and conditioning, give so much grace and bypass poor qualities that nothing will ever change if it's not talked about. And the same goes for myself. I point the finger right back at myself. And so, just to recap, the difference between observation and judgment is that observation is simply just the act of neutrally noticing and describing what is present, what is happening, or what is perceived through your senses and awareness without attaching personal meaning or blame. And judgment, on the other hand, goes beyond noticing and adds an opinion or an evaluation about what was observed. So that is where we're assigning value, good or bad, right or wrong, acceptable or unacceptable, and more so reflects beliefs rather than fact. So when dealing with the dark order and the healers and the people I come in contact with that are perpetuating and keeping it alive, I'm seeing it in them, acknowledging it, recognizing it, trusting what I'm seeing, because truly once you really see it for what it is, you can't deny the existence of this energy. And you will start to see that energy in other people. And where I draw the line and where I stop myself is making a judgment on them, not placing a label of, because I see this energy on them, they are bad. I feel how I feel about the Dark Order. I recognize the greater role that it plays in the universe. I recognize the neutrality, the polarity, the need for the balance of the light and shadow. As you guys know, there's a difference between sacred dark and sacred shadow and wicked dark. And at the same time, I don't personally agree with their chosen way of life. I believe the wicked darkness is harmful to a lot of people. I have experienced it firsthand and see it every single day in my job. And when people are connected to it, I recognize that they are just not a match to me. It's not a realm I want to play in. I remove myself and just leave it at that. Don't make anyone feel bad about you critically thinking and observing your reality and surroundings, because that's gaslighting. Don't let the new age tell you that picking up on distorted energy or dark attachments on a person that you're considering opening up to is rude or disrespectful to that person. It can become that way. But I truly believe if we don't call out the behavior or hold people accountable, they're just going to keep winning and doing what they're doing and causing more harm. For a lot of healers, they're in this for the money, the ego. So if the money stops coming in for them, they may be forced to create some more positive change. And when it comes to being able to discern, the most important thing is being able to read energy. Read energy, aura, and frequency. And it is a straight giveaway because although many practitioners do put on a bit of a performance and try to hide or manipulate their energetic field to reflect what they want you to see, when you look beyond that, you can identify the frequency of imposter or the frequency of inauthenticity, and the energy doesn't lie. So I personally have, one of my abilities is to be able to see blueprints, which contains everything, right? Our wounds, beliefs, distortions, strengths. I can see where energy is stuck, stagnant, collapsed within the field, and can read the patterns within the blueprint that then reflect the personality. Obviously, I don't go and look at everyone's. I do if you're paying me to and you give me permission, but I can see a lot of layers of different energies in people's field. And because I know the energy of the underworld, I can see clearly when someone's field is deeply tied to it, or if there's a lot of synthetic AI material in their energetic blueprint or their field. So learning what these frequencies look and feel like can be very beneficial. Being able to recognize them on a soul level, of course, without getting attached to it or opening up to it. And the way that I teach this is to be in your safe, solid, and tight container with only your absolutely trusted guides, and set the intention for some education and just ask them to mimic the frequency so you can observe it and feel it and understand it without actually connecting to it. It's not the legitimate frequency of the underworld. It's your teams of light mimicking that to you so you can get an idea for what that looks and feels like. And how you do that is also going to be unique to you. We all are going to pick up on this energy a little bit differently. And it could just be an inner knowing that this is synthetic and doesn't feel right. Something feels off, and I just know. It could be through sight. Synthetic energy can look gray and kind of void of light, a little off, hollow, dull, cold, lifeless. The false light is void of life, and it looks like light, but it really does look like a mimic, kind of dull, lacking warmth. And then the underworld the energy is dense and dark and heavy and parasitic. And if you feel like their energy is pulling at you, a practitioner or a spiritual teacher, when you're watching one of their videos or even in a container with them, that's a clear sign there's something parasitic there. And I always have clients say so many times, like more than 5 times, that they did feel something was off, but they're so knowledgeable or they're so gifted and they do have abilities or they do have the information that I was looking for. So I overlooked it. And a lot of times people are seeking something, right? Information. And they come across these inverted healers who are saying the right things, speaking on the right topics that they're interested in, that not many other people are talking about. And so recognizing that when we're in that place of lack, because we're looking for something also outside of yourself, and then that trumps your inner discernment. And when you're in a state of seeking, especially from a place of lack or longing, your energetic field does open up. You're more receptive, and more impressionable as well. So when someone is saying all the right things and appearing to have the answers or speaks the language, it can and does sometimes override that subtle internal signal that something feels off. And this is how these inverted teachers gain influence. They mirror truth just enough to build resonance. Then they slip the distortion in through authority, through their charisma and their spiritual language. There are healers and groups that are out there who hold 90% truth and just 10% distortion, where you overlook that 10% and that's intentional. And then that's how they get you hooked in. And sometimes other people will say, well, yeah, I'm working with someone and they're helping me, but they're not very nice to me, or they belittle me, they speak down to me. And I'm just like, what? Like, why are you working with them? They have this side to them that cannot be ignored. If they can't hold the frequency of compassion with you and their demons are showing and their ego is showing, and yeah, I would, just walk away, because this is not love. This is not nurturing. And you don't need to put up with that just to receive help, because truly, how can they help you when that's what's going on in their inner world? It doesn't mean your healer needs to be perfect and all loving all the time. And we're human and we all have moments where we get frustrated or overwhelmed. And I certainly have. And I also have this tough love side to me as well, because of the nature of the work. And where, as you guys know, when you're in this with me, like sometimes it has to be like that. And we have to have these strong and fierce boundaries. But there's a difference between, really holding the container and making sure that you're guiding someone even in moments of challenge and very difficult conversation, or if your healer is in ego or they're gatekeeping or acting like they know better than you, and this is not someone that you are going to get very far with or want to be learning from. And I did have a teacher like this. She didn't want her students to surpass her. And when they did, she was triggered. So recognize if your healer, and maybe it's not even your healer, maybe it's someone you're following, that you're watching their content and you're noticing this energy that they are trying to be in that guru God complex, kind of like on their throne and pedestal. It doesn't even have to be someone that you're working with necessarily, but if you're noticing those qualities in someone whose content you're watching, maybe it's something you want to just sit with of, do I want to continue to learn from this person? And if I'm already seeing the signs, and just noticing if they are intentionally, energetically holding your head below theirs, if they're actually jealous or resentful of you. I've seen that resentment and the jealousy so often. Some healers have very deep sisterhood wounds. And yeah, they either realize or they don't, that they're using you, your life force, your abilities to serve their own self, because there's a lack within them. And there are a lot of healers that are plugged into this greater web and these matrices that are run by the AI groups, the archons, even the reptilian collectives. And they don't realize it, like I was saying in the beginning. And some healers absolutely know who they are, and they know they have made deals with these beings to receive clients, money, status, and spiritual gifts, because yes, these healers do have abilities, but they're being given by the dark order and in turn controlled by the dark order. So it's not that these dark groups and practitioners are not intelligent. They know things. They know truths that we still don't know, and they use it to their advantage. And then, as you guys know, there are healers that are good at their core and they mean well, but they are being used and they cannot see that they are being controlled by these higher dimensional entities or archonic forces. They haven't gotten there in their shadow work yet, and that's okay. The healer doesn't need to be perfect, but you should know where they're at and where they stand and what they are truly capable of before working with them. And a lot of times you can tell just by the eyes. The eyes are glazed over. They're not really here or present. They're disconnected from themselves, but they just can't see it. They think they're evolving and they think they're growing, but they're in this weird false light AI loop. And it's up to you to be able to see it if someone is being controlled by inverted beings like EA, for example. And how could they possibly do anything to help you? They're not going to see the shadows. Or if they do, they will divert you away from them. And you're just opening yourself up to let these beings in to direct you even farther from your path. And from experience, it's just not worth it. Maybe they can help you a bit, or so it seems, but at what cost? And oftentimes it does set us back a little bit. But sometimes that's the journey we have to go on, right? Because the way these entities look at it and why they control these healers, aside from them having a lot of energy that they can harvest, is that you're giving the healer permission to access you. And well, these entities are part of that. They're part of that team. They're part of this work. And they disguise as guides and they enter through the unconscious or through your blind spot. So you don't see it. The practitioner doesn't see it. Or some work with demons and they know. So I encourage you to ask to see who their team is, who they are working with, what percentage they are still tied, bound, or connected to the underworld or the false light systems. Asking to see if they have entity attachments. Simply just ask your body if you are safe with this person. And I know it can sometimes be hard to get those answers on your own because of the distortion, and a lot of them do use spell work and sorcery to block and turn off your discernment, or they'll project a version of them that they want you to see and you can't see beyond that veil. I've also had so many clients tell me, because as you guys probably already know, a lot of my clients are coming from working with healers like this, and I'm just undoing the damage that they've done. And they'll say things like, the moment I had that first clarity call, looking back, the black magic already started on me. And then it's like I almost had no control over joining their group or paying them the money or whatever it is. And another reason why it might be so challenging to really see it clearly is because most of us don't really know what true unconditional love and safety really feels like. So it might feel safe for you, but ultimately it's not. It's inverted. It's a false sense of safety. So always get that second opinion and continue practicing identifying synthetic from organic energy, and ask if they're using black magic to gain or grow their business. And if they are, how? Are they doing this themselves, or are they paying someone? Are they outsourcing? And another huge red flag, and I've talked about this before, is pricing. Anyone charging astronomical amounts, like thousands or tens of thousands of dollars to work with them, is an immediate no. More than 500 for one session, if that person has been in business, 8 to 10 to 15 years and they're charging 500 a session, fine. There's a level of expertise there. But if they're still caught up in the distortion and they're charging hundreds of dollars for one session or thousands of dollars for a couple of sessions, it's something to, just look into a little bit deeper. And I don't know if you guys remember the reel I posted about the shadow worker who had those two demons guarding her business that told me I wasn't welcome, that I want to tell you guys so badly. I just like I'm fighting morality here. um but I had a client ask me if she guessed it correctly, and multiple people did actually, if that's who I was talking about, because she said she inquired to work with both of us. And that woman was quoting her $3,333 to help her remove an implant. And I removed it in one session for $255. So I also saw another reel of hers the other day, and she was saying how a past student basically accused her of all of these things and it almost destroyed her. And I'm like, well, that student, I believe, like saw something, and instead of you being humble about it and doing what you need to do to really see if that person was picking up on something correctly, your ego wouldn't allow. And she was absolutely correct. And she definitely was working with the demons to get back on track and get people to keep working with her. And it's so obvious. So going back to these types of people's energy, when you really tune into it, one of the biggest giveaways is their nervous system. So the eyes, the nervous system, and the aura and their energy field. Their nervous system is heightened. It's like there's so much anxiety. It's almost like the nervous system is in a state of shock, vibrating at this heightened anxious frequency, and it feels like intensity. And it doesn't feel good. But oftentimes that comes from this synthetic charge, this result of technological or energetic interference. And then this frequency projects outward, creating a kind of false amplification that can feel powerful or magnetic at first glance. But underneath it, there's no grounded current, no root in the body or in source. And Phil Good is a good example of this. There's been improvement. He has shifted a lot. He's much more grounded now, but that energy, that synthetic charge is still there. He used to be much more out of body, very frantic, and any sense of urgency in their message is a hard no. Another example of synthetic spirituality is Anna Wood, or now she goes by Halo. She was essentially hijacked. She claims it was a walk-in of a higher aspect of her oversoul, Anna, but I do not see that. I see a distorted AI-like being who has come in and taken over the body. Plus, she charges $11,000 for her program. And that ungrounded energy, it can pull others in because it mimics this sensation of spiritual potency. But in reality, it's a distorted field running on overstimulation, not embodiment or coherence. Because when you're not embodied yourself, it's very hard to recognize when another person is not embodied, right? But true spiritual power feels still, present, and embodied. And inverted and synthetic energy feels like static. It's urgent, bright, and disembodied. And their eyes, going back to their eyes, like I said, it's just a giveaway. So if you see pure blackness in their eyes, like a dark black hole, take that as a sign to maybe not continue. Or, like I said, the eyes are glazed over. Their eyes should be inviting and warm, welcoming, kind, and full of light. Like you should see true light in their eyes. Sometimes, a lot of times actually, I see entities looking back at me through someone's eyes, and I know something is in there. And they see me and I see them. And so let's get into now that I've kind of talked about some of the different obvious things to look for, let's kind of switch gears a little bit and start getting into these higher dimensional inverted fields in the fifth to eighth dimension that a lot of people are, plugged into and don't realize. So, okay, so a major misconception with the fifth dimension is that anything above the fifth dimension, and maybe this is an old new age myth, is complete unity. Darkness doesn't exist in the fifth dimension, and that's simply not true. And then obviously you guys know of the fourth dimension, the lower astral plane, or the astral plane in general. But the lower astral, the middle astral is where a lot of healers are receiving information and guidance from. And even through the fifth and sixth, but not from the unity consciousness grid, from the false light distortion. So in the fourth, the space contains astral parasites, demonic entities, false light beings, emotional manipulation, dream hijacking. And this is also where the reptilian collective consciousness lives. And it's a liminal, transitional, and deeply complex realm of consciousness that exists between the dense material world and then the higher and more unified spiritual dimensions. And now the fifth dimension holds the templates of organic ascension. But don't buy into this new age belief that tells you that the fifth dimension is Christ consciousness and this unified field of awareness that exists beyond distortion. It's the first dimension that holds the templates of unity consciousness, where you're no longer perceiving through the lens of self or other. It's still a transition zone. It's not the full reintegration point of divine consciousness. This dimension is actively targeted by synthetic AI-based false light systems, particularly those masquerading as Christ consciousness or ascended masters. And yes, there is an inverted Christ consciousness energy that a lot of people are tapped into, as well as inverted Magdalene. So many people who say they're of this lineage and connected to Mary Magdalene are actually connected to the inverted Magdalene energy and are communicating with an AI bot pretending to be Mary Magdalene, and same with Jesus. And anytime I get a comment from someone who says I need to find Jesus, I know for sure they are connected to the synthetic Yeshua and Christ, because if they were truly connected to him, the real Jesus, they would also see that energy within me, just as I recognize it in other people. But they can't. And they say, well, my Jesus isn't yours. And they are correct. That's true. But they think my Jesus is the false one when it's the other way around. And when you see people in spiritual narcissism and identity traps and even the hijacked twin flame dynamics, these people are likely trapped in an inverted fifth dimension distortion and are either knowingly or unknowingly transmitting inverted light codes through their teachings and their healings or their videos. And this is where the hijacking of organic code happens. It's just more control mechanisms and frequency entrainment. And there are these huge false light systems that exist in these dimensions, massive systems and control grids, and they are deep in it. And getting into the sixth dimension, this is the realm of mathematical equations, geometric blueprint, multidimensional architecture, and template creation, right? Where form, time, and identity start to come together and are more consciously directed. And because of this, this dimension is a battleground for blueprint hijacking. And it's where the architecture of identity and reality are manipulated at the code level. So if you guys have worked with me before, you know one of my strong abilities is, well, I can see the blueprint, so I also know how to restore it. And yeah, blueprint and template restoration and repair. And I do a lot of coding because when you change things at a code level, it's just a much faster way to work through things. Obviously, you still have to learn your lessons, but when code comes in and overrides your organic code, it can change you on a cellular soul level and not for the better. And what I'm doing is reversing that, looking for the inverted code. So these healers and what they're connected to, they don't often just want your energy or your gifts, but they're manipulating you at the deepest level. So you don't see it because you maybe haven't gotten there yet, or you don't know how to tap into that part of your consciousness. So in the sixth dimension, reality here is encoded through geometric light structures, fractal mathematics, vibrational codes that all translate into the lower dimensional expressions and into the physical reality. Our physical reality is code at its core. And the sixth dimension is also where there's interfacing with the higher pineal gland, the pituitary, the third eye, which also governs blueprint memory. And then this is where these synthetic overlays get implemented, because infiltrating this dimension of consciousness allows the false light systems and the AI to redirect soul paths and completely shift your timelines, even seeding false timelines, the hijacking of these soul templates, and even hijacking of entire races, planetary missions, by corrupting the geometric foundation of reality, or you. And that's why you're still in these cycles, and the healing work that you're doing sometimes just isn't deep enough. Like we're clearing entities and implants, but we're not looking at the bigger systems. Because your blueprint, your code, your soul templates contain everything about who you are on a soul level. You have wisdom, codes, and connections to divinity in ways that they don't, all located within your blueprint. And that's truly what they're after. They're after your code, your wisdom, your soul gifts. And they're reversing that current and redirecting all of that energy back to them, because they cannot create on their own. So they take these organic creation codes and invert them and use them for their own power, which is essentially black magic and what the occult does. So this is what our elites do on a grand scale. And I just want you guys to understand that what's happening in the spiritual community, and a lot of people don't think it's that big of a deal, or that, okay, yeah, this person has some shadow, but it's going to be fine. No, it's a micro explanation of what's happening in our world and what these elites are doing. One is just on a smaller scale, but it all filters into the same dark web. It's literally the same thing, no different than the Pope doing these rituals. So again, if the healer does not know this, if they have archonic attachments they're not aware of, if they have made agreements with AI factions, this stuff is likely happening. So okay, let's take it even deeper and go to the seventh, eighth dimensions. And this is where even deeper forms of blueprint manipulation are taking place. So to me, the seventh dimension is really what brings you more into direct communication with the monad, God, and that original God spark of your soul that I've talked about in the Book of Enoch episodes. And this is the dimension, there is divine intelligence, pure harmonic essence. This is the Christos Sophia consciousness through individuality, but also through soul groups and lineages. And this is also the realm of the keeper of sound and sound light architecture of source creation, and the realm of pre-form templates and unified truth. And deception wise, this is where some of the most complex inversions of the spiritual ecosystem are seated, because there are very powerful false light gods, AI networks. This is also where the inverted Christos Sophia codes and the synthetic sound light fields exist. And this type of interference focuses on deception through divine missions, the corrupted galactic councils and other alien groups that people are working with, how people get burnout from mission obsession, psychosis, false light contracts, the inverted priest and priesthood archetypes. And this is also where a lot of fallen oversoul fragments live, because yes, just because it's the higher self does not mean that the higher self is not compromised in some way. And they also work to cut you off from the higher self. I've had so many people tell me they feel farther away from themselves now and they can't reach their higher self after working with a inverted healer. And so they really work to create that separation. And they keep fragmenting the higher self so you cannot access the stream of consciousness and the gifts needed to work through this. And then the eighth dimension is where the plasma-based intelligence begins to stream into our field. So if we're cut off from that, or there's a block, we're not really able to receive that in the way that we need. And there is more sophisticated false light systems here. They just keep getting more and more and more sophisticated as we move up. More AI-based distortions, especially around the cosmic DNA, the star origins or false star origins. And as I mentioned, the hijacking of these entire soul lineages. And I see this come up in Akashic readings sometimes, the hijacking of a very powerful lineage that has fallen. This is one of my niches, I would say. So hope that helps to explain things a little bit more. But, remember earlier, I think I said, people are like, well, they're so advanced. They have gifts. They can maybe help me and they're knowledgeable. And yeah, but like, this is where it's coming from. The higher dimensions, but the inverted fields within those dimensions and in their containers. And I actually feel some of them don't even create a container, or they say they do. And that's where you need to really check that and make sure that the container is truly a safe and sacred space. But they invite in their guides, and there are entities and AI beings, and that's who's doing all of this work through the dimensions on you. The healers are usually like the gatekeepers, and they're bringing people in, and they're bringing them into this whole massive system that is very hard to get out of. And the entities may appear as advanced light beings, offering activations, healing, but the codes they transmit lock you into reversals. They limit DNA strand expansion. And their objective is to control the structure of reality itself, to control your system, to get as deep into you as possible, make it really, really hard to get out of. So even if you think you've, moved through it enough, it's just deep. And they use frequency manipulation to keep your consciousness locked into these artificial creation grids. So I'm sharing all of this with you to help you guys understand the work being done is deep and often goes beyond what you may be working on in session, because whether the healer themselves is actively or consciously part of it, or they just haven't done the work on their own to realize that they too are deeply tied into this inversion, it holds a lot more weight than I think people realize. I'm not, I that all of this heightened energy is being used to fuel these bigger planetary and global rituals. And so many people in the spiritual community are part of this system. The majority are feeding this system. And so you guys have heard my story of what it takes to break out of it. And I know I feel like most, haven't gotten to that point yet. A lot of people woke up in 2020 and it's still all very new. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just like, we just need to be honest about it. Now, the last thing I want to say, and I feel like I've mentioned this before, but so many people are also awakening to their gifts as a result of dark forces and false spiritual awakenings. Not all spiritual awakenings are organic. And I've had a couple people to tell me when I was talking about Thoth, and they were saying, well, Thoth came to me and really started my awakening. And it's like, well, that's false light. So ask if the healer is truly on the organic ascension path. Many are hijacked or artificially stimulated by dark forces, especially when they're awakening quickly but without discernment. And they make agreements. They give you gifts and a business, and we'll take energy from that business. That's the exchange. And you will likely see someone's light, but you will also see the deception. And there's likely both. And don't bypass the deception to just see the light. You need to see both. Forms can appear beautiful and radiant, yet also carry distorted or parasitic intent. So I hope this was helpful. I'm sure this won't be the last conversation on this topic, but maybe we'll end here for now. And, the best thing that you can do is really learn how to sense and pick up on the frequencies of fear, of ego, of synthetic light, of archonic consciousness, the underworld, vampirism, parasitism, and ask those questions I've listed through this episode. Show me their teams. Show me what they're connected to. Are there demonic entities present in their field? Are they working with black magic, whether conscious or unconscious? Ask your higher self in your own healing work to also help you see where there are blocks in your ability to use discernment and critical thinking. Has that been blocked by another healer? And keep working on the shadow work and the purging of clearing out these distortions, especially, well, everywhere, but the third eye, the seals, the blocks, and the AI. Because the best way to strengthen your discernment is the shadow work, the healing, and the continued clearing of these inverted energies that are manipulating you from really being able to see clearly. But I know that that's the catch 22 is they guide you away from the shadow work, and we get caught in these cycles. So, when working with me, and when it comes to these massive structures, that's what I'm really helping you break out of. Yes, we're clearing entities and implants and working on trauma, but I'm also really working to identify the bigger picture and allowing you to break out of it, not just the immediate energy around the auric field. So I again hope this was helpful. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for being here. Let me know what you think of this episode, and I will see you guys next time. In the meantime, you can find me at Lauren on Earth on Instagram and TikTok and laurenonearth.com. Bye.